here's what she did. She took my uncle's advice, which was really good practical advice, and that was go to business school, major in marketing. Because no matter what you do, marketing is a great degree to have, which is true. So she went to school at University of Texas in marketing. But here's the thing, she wasn't really interested in it. She was smart, but she didn't do the greatest. It wasn't like she did terribly, but she didn't do well enough that when she graduated and she wanted to pursue what she was really interested in was medicine, she couldn't get into any of the med schools. She couldn't go to into the degree or I think she looked at physical therapy as well. She couldn't get in because her grades weren't good enough. And part of the reason was because she picked a major that was practical, not something that she was interested in. Today she's in her early 30s. She's in pharmacy school, which she did kind of go the long way around getting into medicine. But if she would have potentially made a bit of a shift earlier, she could have gone down the path that she was really interested in. Another buddy of mine, Kevin, he's known since he was in high school he wanted to be a chiropractor. He did his undergrad in one of the sciences, went to chiropractic school. He lives in Austin. He's a chiropractor. He loves what he does. He's part of the 20%. He knew from an early age. Unlike my friend Dave, he knew since he was 8 years old that he wanted to be a meteorologist, a weatherman. He was in the meteorology club. He graduated at the top of his class. He got a dream job right out of high school as an assistant meteorologist, which is a weatherman on TV. But he worked for the TV station for 2 years and absolutely hated it. So he ended up going to work for my uncle. Now he sells advertising in the newspaper industry. He loves it, and he loves school. He did very, very well. But he's another one that picked something that he's super interested in and realized 2 to 3 years down the road that that thing that he loved so much, it didn't really translate into a professional career. And then you've got someone like myself. Now, I was, since I got my real estate license out of high school, I did 10 years of real estate. I was looking at going into the business school. Quite honestly, I wasn't sure if I even liked business enough to major in it. I was a bit intimidated. As some of you know, the business school can be sometimes hard to get into at Texas A&M. So I figured after this lecture, I was like, well, what am I good at? What am I interested in? And so I knew that no matter what I did, whether I was in sales, whether I was in teaching, that I was going to be talking to people. So I majored in communication and minored in business. Now, after I was in school a little bit, I realized I did like business quite a lot. I wish I would have taken more classes in business, but when I graduated, I was 28 years old. I was ready to get out. I didn't want to take another victory lap for a year to get a bachelor's in business. But today, you're looking at it. I've been in sales. I've done all kind of different things, but everything has evolved around communication, teaching, training, speaking. One day, I'll actually get paid for this, and I don't have to come here for free as much anymore. So look, here's the takeaway. Here's the takeaway for that 80-20 rule when it comes to picking a major. Find what you like. Now, I can imagine you going to tell your parents, you know, Mom, Dad, I know you had big plans for me. You wanted me to become a lawyer or a doctor or a professor. But instead of doing that, I think I'm going to transfer to Northwestern Tennessee University and major in underwater basket weaving because, Mom, that is what I'm passionate about. And you can imagine what they would think about that. So whether it's Czechoslovakian literature or women's studies or underwater basket weaving, whatever that is, I guess my big disclaimer here is if you choose to follow your passion, if you choose to follow something that you're interested in, and people in that industry make, let's say, $32,000 a year as an expert, when you graduate, you need to be okay making $32,000 a year if you're going to major in Czechoslovakian literature and you want to work in that field, right? Actually, you need to be okay making $19,000 a year because when you first graduate, you're going to be doing all the work that the experts don't like doing. And you have to work your way up to $32,000 a year. And if you're 100% happy with that, That is absolutely amazing. But I think one of the interesting things is I fall into the same category of, I was told, imagine this, I was told that if I went to Texas A&M, that I would never go without a job. I was told that Texas A&M was the greatest university in the world, and the Aggie Network would take care of me forever. I thought that just because I graduated, that people would lay out these jobs and career making $100,000 a year. Can you imagine? So yes, when I graduated, what I didn't realize is by graduating college, I would have the privilege of applying for jobs with the hope to start at the bottom. Now, the good thing of having a degree, whether it's from Texas A&M or Sam Houston State or Northeastern Tennessee University, a lot of times if you have a degree, you get to apply for a different grouping of careers, and your ceiling is higher, okay? That doesn't mean that when you first start out, that magically you're going to be above someone that maybe doesn't have a degree. But this is what happens when you finish. When I graduated college, and I went to get my first, when I did my first interview with the HR manager, the only person that cared that I went to Texas A&M was me. Because when I was hired, I was with about 40 different sales reps in Houston, and they were from all over the place. All they wanted to know was, did you graduate? Can you finish? Can you set a goal and complete the goal? The other part of college that I didn't really realize, I actually had what she'd be, maybe my niece, second, third cousin. She's 13 years old, and she says, how many times have you used the Pythagorean theorem, I think maybe that's it, Pythagorean theorem, since you graduated high school? And the answer to that is never. And she says, so why do I need to know it? Well, first off, it's because the people that determine whether you graduate says so. But as a boss, as a business owner, as an HR manager, what people want to know is, if I give you some work that you don't like and that you're not interested in, can you perform? Will you do a good job, or are you only going to do a good job in the things you're interested in? Because once we're out of here, everything changes. Nobody cares about your background or your living situation or your religion or your school. Now, if you're part of let me rephrase. Most of the time, people don't care as much. Yes, your mother cares. But in the overall scheme of things, it doesn't carry as much weight as I thought it did. So if you're going to be in college, pick something that you like. This is a good example. Here's a good example. When I was applying for jobs in Houston, this is an example of when I was grateful that I got a degree. This was 2008, 2009, one of the worst economies in the last 30 years. After I came to the realization that people weren't going to be rolling out the red carpet for me because I graduated from college, me and a buddy were looking for jobs at the same time. This guy, we graduated almost at the same time from high school. This guy could sell circles. He could work circles around me when it comes to sales. But I was applying for jobs that had a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 base plus commission with benefits. He was applying for jobs that were straight commission, 5 to 7 days a week. We both got jobs that we didn't necessarily like. We both ended up in situations neither one of us were planning. But my upside was much higher simply because I had that piece of paper. So if all you do is finish, that's good enough. Now, one good thing that you have here at Blinn is you have opportunity to participate. that if you go to a school like Texas A&M or Sam Houston State or some of these larger universities, you don't have as much opportunity to participate. So you take this as an opportunity to pad your resume, to experience some things, because it might make a really big difference, or open yourself up to an industry that you may have been unexpected. Here's a couple of things that life lessons that I've learned since I've been out of college. Tony Robbins has a really good perspective on stress, struggle, and fear. And what he says is that our brain is over 2 million years old, and our brain is not set up to make you happy, joyous, and free. He says our brain is set up for us to survive. So when a lion would jump out of the bush, we'd know to get away. But the thing is that lions, tigers, and bears are not going to be jumping out of the H building while we're walking to class. And so now that brain that is meant to keep us safe, what does it do? What does it occupy its time with? If you're anything like me, oftentimes it's on a constant worry loop, constant fear, constant concern, constant anxiety. What is it that I got to do today? I got a knot in my stomach. What is it? What am I going to do? I shoulda, I coulda, I woulda. That's what my brain is cycling through and doing. And so when you're in school and you've got what feels like the weight of the world on you to perform, to make the right decision, to make the right choices, to pick the right career path, to make sure that you don't waste your parents' money, right? What do we do? Well, I would argue, spend your time figuring out what makes you tick. Spend your time figuring out what makes you happy. Spend your time on self-awareness. Because if you don't know what you want, if you don't know what you like, how is anybody else going to know that? Spend your time on your EQ as opposed to your IQ. Now, IQ is basically such, so they say. However, if you spend your time on your emotional intelligence, that is, being able to identify how you feel, being able to communicate that to others. That's emotional quotient, EQ. It's also being able to understand how other people are feeling and be able to identify in a way that's productive. Studies show today that people that have a higher EQ are not only more successful in life and business, but they're more successful in groups, as leaders, as part of an organization. Because anybody can speak into Google and figure out when the Battle of Bullhorn, I just made that up. Ron, you can help me out with that, I don't know. Anybody can Google something and find out the answer. So if you spend your time figuring out what's important to you, how you feel, and being able to communicate that to others, as a whole, you can make massive change. And that is what hiring managers want to know. That is what business owners want to know. That is what people who are looking for someone to follow wants to know. What are your relationships like? How do you make them feel? Spend your time figuring out what you like. I've got a few notes here about spending your time learning what your inner voice is telling you. Some people call that intuition. Some people call that your gut. It's that little voice inside your head that is directing you as to, I'm moving in the right direction, or this is not going to be good. Spend your time learning what your gut is telling you. I think that the ability to do that comes over time. You don't always know what the right answer is. And quite frankly, a lot of times you learn a lot more from your failures than you do for your wins. So making the right decision may end up being the wrong decision in the long term, but the experience that you're going to gain is going to be vastly beneficial to you. Here's a couple of good ones. Find a spiritual practice Learn to meditate. Find an activity that introduces you to you. And what I mean by that is that we're so used to drawing lines in the sand, right? So many people, whether it's politics or religion or what school you go to, everybody is looking for reasons to separate. And I would argue, look for reasons to be inclusive. And one way that's been extremely beneficial to me is to have a routine. So my routine in the morning is usually like a prayer, a meditation, a journal. Very similar at the end of the day. But what happens for me is at any given moment, I feel like a scared little boy. I don't know what to do. I'm never good enough. I'm not small enough. I don't have enough hair, which is true, but I don't need to be focusing on it. At any given moment, I'm worried about what I don't have. But if I will stick to the routine, that which brings me back to gratitude, the reality of where I'm at, who I am here. If I focus on what's right in front of me, I don't get so caught up. The pressure isn't so big. Instead of looking for reasons to separate me from you, I'm looking for ways to identify with you so we can work together. Get you a daily routine. Spend time not medicating. Although that works too sometimes. Medicating is very good sometimes. Experiment. There are people that have the opinion to be a jack of all trades, and there are people that say become a specialist. Now, whatever's right for you, I'm not sure, but I would argue experiment with as many things as possible. Gain as much experience as you can in other industries. Do things that you're not sure